Soon his head, covered with curly, dark, auburn gold hair, followed by the rest of his small body, lay in my hands. Oh my God, I'm actually getting emotional. It's like they've been waiting so long for this to happen, and it's this prophecy that's been waiting to be revealed, and he's finally coming out, and it's like, oh my God. Glory be to God in the highest, peace, goodwill to humankind. The refrains of the angelic hosts resounded. Our chamber glowed with golden celestial light. Behold my Son, in whom I am come to gather my own. In thee I am well pleased, were the words etched into our hearts by God Most High. So did we receive the Son of Man, and just as he had promised and showed me over a year before, Yeshua had delivered himself into my small hands. Indeed, I was blessed among women, even as was his precious mother. Oh, it's just emotional because babies are just so special. Hi, and welcome back to Empowered Spirit Healing. Today we're going to continue on with episode 8 of the Reading Anna, the grandmother of Jesus. Episode 7 was a pretty exciting episode because we learned all about Mary Anna, which is Mother Mary. We learned all about her childhood. We learned about how there was a group of women and men in the Essene community that were chosen to be a part of the light conception, and they didn't know until kind of like right near the end who was going to be the couple chosen to basically have Yeshua or Jesus. And right near the end, we find out that it is actually Mary Anna and her partner that she is drawn to, which is Joseph ben Jacob. So it's really, really fascinating. That was, very cool episode. So now we're going to continue on. We are going to be learning about, chapter 17 is Yeshua's light conception. So we're going to be learning all about how Jesus or Yeshua was conceived. And I'm hoping if we have enough time to be able to continue right through to Yeshua's birth. So I'm going to read as quickly as I can, and let's get stuck into it. Okay. Late one night, just before sunrise during the last week of June, in the year 5 BC, Joachim and I were lying upon our pallet when an immense light came over us. Within the light were 4 angels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel. We were drawn up as within a whirlwind into a great light-filled chamber. I recognized this chamber as the same one that we had experienced during the times that our children had been light conceived. I like to think of this extraordinary, beautiful place as one of the many rooms within the city of light that I called the New Jerusalem. We were pleased to behold Mary Anna and her beloved Joseph entering into the chamber. Others of our family and extended family living near and far also entered in. Among these were Mary of Magdala and Joseph of Arimathea, Tabitha and Isaac, Rebecca and Simeon, and Noah, who was standing beside a beautiful, unidentified woman with long strawberry blonde hair. We were informed that all of these couples, as well as others, would be participating in light conception so that the souls who would play their integral parts could make their entrances. Mighty and wondrous things did we see and hear. Wow, how cool. Just imagine going into this light filled chamber and just being like, yep, you, and you are all going to be like conceiving a baby. How amazing. The four angels each in turn told us that Mary Anna and Joseph ben Jacob had been overlit with the full presence of the Son of Man. Like Mary Anna, Yeshua would also be born as an avatar capable of anchoring vast fields of cosmic consciousness into the earth plane. And just as Mary Anna had entered fully into my womb without Joachim's physical seed, so it would be with the conception of her son. And as it had been that Joachim's genetics were not required for Mary Anna's earthly expression, so it was that Joseph's physical DNA was not required. That's very interesting. Likewise, as it had been with Joachim, Joseph's etheric seed and DNA were permeated with light as he energetically merged with the great cosmic soul that would be his son. As we heard the sanctuary bell ringing, we once again became aware of our physical bodies, touched by the dawn's first light. Tenderly holding each other, tears flowing, our bodies quaking, we lifted our hearts in praise to God on high. At last he was here. No sooner had we expressed our thanksgiving than we heard a gentle knock at our door, which slowly opened. There stood a most radiant Mary Anna and Joseph. Their countenance shone with white light. Inwardly knowing that we knew what had occurred, Mary Anna and Joseph joined us as we silently knelt together and offered up our prayers of immense gratitude. The sweetest fragrance of lilies and roses wafted upon the air. Our hearts overflowed with thanksgiving. Upon hearing the call to morning prayers, we went before the community to announce what had come upon us. The young women who had been prepared with Mary Anna wept with simultaneous joy and sadness. Each was a worthy candidate capable of immaculate conception of the Son of Man. All had prepared well and had given their hearts to the often arduous task. Now that Mary Anna had been chosen, the weight of the long months of initiations was felt and lifted up by each maiden, according to her degree of attachment to being the chosen one. So in this honor, there was yet another initiation for each beloved soul. Instead of succumbing to disappointment, it was time now to shift their intention to bringing forth other great souls who would be Yeshua's disciples, also demonstrating and supporting Christ's initiations. Instead of going out onto the fields to labor, we first attended to the essential chores and then all gathered into the sanctuary for an entire day of fasting and prayer. Long into the night we prayed. Some continued in this fashion for several days. When all had received a witness and guidance for our next steps, the community of Carmel resumed its usual routine. Because there is misunderstanding about how Joseph received the news of Mary Anna's pregnancy, I am weaving this account in such a way that you may walk with me between two worlds. Much of this misunderstanding is due to the manner in which your gospel accounts were recorded and translated. On the one hand, there is the story as it is understood by the human mind, governed by fear and unbalanced polarities. On the other hand, there is also the story as it was lived by those who were not bound by the limitations of the third dimension. Also, I think, in our very modern day and age, if you don't know anything about mystery schools and initiations and all of this kind of thing, then how would you, as growing up as a child, I just thought, okay, she just she was a virgin mother. Like, how does that work? I didn't even know what that meant as a child. But then as I grew up, I guess I never really thought about it too much. I just thought it was one of those weird, like, mysteries or miracles that happened in the Bible, like Jesus turning water into wine and things like that. But when you start learning about alchemy and mystery schools and initiations and all that kind of thing, and then reading this book, it's like, wow, it's the whole another level. So very, very fascinating. In your gospel account, Joseph is described as distraught and ignorant of what had come upon Mary Anna. Yes, that's true. It is also amplified that Mary Anna knew very little about light conception. It is said that it took a visitation of Gabriel to convince Joseph that there had been no foul play, so that he would accept Mary Anna as his wife and not bring recrimination down upon her. Thus would the egoic human mind contrive such an explanation, so true, so that those who did not know the mysterious science of light conception could make some sense of the story that presented Yeshua's conception as a miracle. Through the following centuries of darkness, those few adepts who knew the secret mysteries cloaked the meaning and hid the records that came from the very hands of those who had witnessed the events. Some of these records are still hidden. Some are suppressed by the church and state, and others were destroyed. Well, no surprise there. Yet that which was hidden is now coming forth when the cycles change to birth an era of light. Many will be surprised when your Bible's multi-layered codes are broken. As I have already shared with you, Joseph well understood what was happening. Several weeks after the conception, Mary Anna confided that she had received guidance from Archangel Gabriel to make a pilgrimage to the Essene camp at Kadesh Barnea. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Then she was to stay in Bethlehem with her cousin Elizabeth during the last trimester of Elizabeth's pregnancy, which was also a light conception. So it seems like quite a lot of the Essene community were having light conception babies. How fascinating. So she and Joseph prepared for the journey. Mary of Magdala and Joseph of Arimathea, Tabitha and Isaac, Rebecca and Simeon accompanied them. All was brought into readiness for the journey to Kadesh Barnea, a remote Essene encampment in the wilderness of Paran near the trade route that passes south towards the Sinai. It was here that Sarah and Abraham, the matriarch and patriarch of the ancient Hebrews, were prepared to conceive their son Isaac, which if you've read the Bible, you probably know the story about Isaac. It was here that an additional anointing of divine light would be delivered into Mary Anna's womb and into the wombs of the three other women, whose lot it was to give birth to three daughters, Mary Magdalene, Sarah, and Miriam. These female children who would eventually become some of Yeshua's key disciples. So isn't that interesting? His key disciples were three women. Would also be initiated into the greater mysteries of resurrection and ascension. Of these, Mary Magdalene, Sarah, and Miriam would play a pivotal roles in supporting Yeshua's life and work. So it was that Mary Anna, Mary of Magdala, Tabitha, Rebecca, and their husbands responded to the call of Archangel Gabriel, even though it meant traveling under adverse summer conditions in order to receive a greater portion of light. Although I was not physically present, I attuned myself to bilocate from time to time and witnessed many wonderful things that I was asked to hold in my heart. In this way, a new chapter of our lives opened to us. Now that Yeshua had been conceived, we looked ahead to the fulfillment of all that he had come into the earth plane to accomplish. You may well imagine the joy that filled our hearts as you contemplate the children you have welcomed into your life. Whether or not you were the birth parent, to be close to a soul making its entrance into the earth plane is to be close to the heavenly realms. This is also true when one is close to souls taking their departure. I have shared with you earlier that there are many highly evolved souls taking embodiment at this time to assist Mother Earth through her ascension process. Just as it was true for Yeshua and his cousins who were light conceived and assisted by conscious parents and a supportive community, so is it possible to participate in light conception today. Wow. Wonder if anybody that we know is going to start light conceiving. The process of coming into the density of Earth is wonderfully enhanced when parents, relatives, birth attendants, and caregivers consciously choose to lift their vibration into greater light. When there is coherent love present, it is possible to resonate harmoniously with these very sensitive children. With this support, these wondrous souls who come with the ability to express great love can accomplish the transformational work of replacing society's dysfunctional structures with those that are more conscious and humane. Thus, while fulfilling my role as a grandmother and guide to the light conceived parents and children, I often reflected on the importance of communal family life at Carmel. I treasured Joachim's and my years of raising our beloved children. Reluctantly, I realized that his role as an exemplary father and teacher might soon be coming to an end. So it was that Joachim and I drew close to one another. As we served our community, we felt the closeness of the glorious light realms as the light-conceived babies grew in their mothers' wombs. Now, if you're hearing a little bit of sound noise in the background, that is my little Biscoff chewing on a stick. So I do apologize if you can hear that and if that's annoying. But I just want to keep going with the story because it's just too exciting. So now we're up to chapter 18, which is Joachim's departure. Now it is with great sadness that I wish to tell you of the passing of Joachim into the realms of divine light. It was during the time that we were eagerly awaiting the return of Mary Anna from her 3 months long visit with Elizabeth in Bethlehem that Joachim began reluctantly to share his knowing with me that it would not be long before he would be leaving the earth plane. He told me about dreams that informed him that his time was drawing nigh and that unlike his Miriam, who chose to ascend her physical body, he would be allowing the elements of his worn form to return to the earth mother. He was shown that during his passing into the light, his higher self would infuse the physical elements of his body with an added portion of consciousness to bless the earth. Wow, that's a very beautiful way to pass. Our beloved teachers, Lord Maitreya and Mahababaji, were close and began instructing him in the process of consciously lifting up his immortal soul. After 3 months passed, Joseph ben Jacob and Simeon took a wagon pulled by donkeys to Bethlehem in order to bring Mary Anna and Rebecca back to Mount Carmel. When they returned, we prepared a formal wedding feast for Mary Anna and Joseph, but not for Rebecca and Simeon, who had been married before their light conception had occurred. After 3 days of ritual preparation, Joseph and Mary Anna were traditionally wed beneath the canopy of Abraham and Sarah in the late autumn of 5 BC. In addition to Mary Anna and Joseph, several other couples were also wed in community celebration. Not all were with child, however. As I have already explained, Mary, Anna, and Rebecca had been blessed with light conceptions, as had also Mary of Magdala and Tabitha. We looked upon these women with reverence. The wedded couples exchanged solemn vows, and then we sang, danced, and rejoiced in jubilant celebration. About a month after the wedding, Joachim came to me while I was laboring in the garden, digging winter root vegetables. He bid me put my tools away and walk with him to Elijah's stone, as we called the sacred altar that Elijah had built shortly before taking his departure within the chariot of the sun. Laying everything aside, we walked to the uppermost knoll of the mount. Not a word did Joachim say to me as we made our way. My heart felt a chill of a nagging foreboding as the cold December winds penetrated my bones. When, alas, we stood together at the top of the mount, Joachim took me into his arms, and we sank upon the dried winter grasses. His face was pale and solemn, yet there was a twinkle in his eyes which eclipsed my fear as I read his body. Still he remained silent as he tenderly took my hands and kissed each finger and palm, pressing my hands to his parched lips. His dark brown eyes blazed with a fiery energy. It was as though he were the Sphinx itself sitting before me. Then he lifted me into his lap, cradling me as if I were a child. His chest began to heave with suppressed tears. At last, grasping tears gushed as a river from his heart. I was stunned, unknowing, not allowing myself to know that this extraordinary emotional outburst might mean. When his tears subsided, my face held close to his. In his hands, he began to share his knowing. While gazing intensely into my eyes and speaking in a hushed voice, Joachim explained that he had been out with the sheep and the goats, enjoying his communal turn as a shepherd when he was taken deeply inward. He was shown the earth and all the light beings who were assembling for the birth of the child we would call Yeshua ben Joseph. At this point in his story, the countenance of my beloved began to shine as the sun. The wind whipped around us. Joachim's long, curly, white hair and beard danced like fiery serpents around his head. Our heavy woolen shawls billowed as we clung to one another. It was now my turn to weep, as I slowly realized that my beloved would no longer be physically by my side. Then, with great resolve, I surrendered my will in order to facilitate the greater part as I understood it. My chest continued to heave, even as Joachim's had before. We lay spent, our arms and legs entwined. Our hearts sought each other and wove tendrils of light until a tapestry of eternal love was woven, which our physical parting could not tear asunder. Slowly we opened our eyes to behold the truth in each other. We are eternally one. In that knowing, there was an immense comfort. Shaken and weak, we held to each other as we arose and turned homewards. The sun broke through thick grey clouds as if the hand of God were blessing us. We followed the golden rays of light to our abode, where we sought refuge among our seen family. We sent word to our children who lived in Galilee and Judea to come and join us in a feast in Mount Carmel. After supper, we called the members of our immediate family to come to our small chamber. Within the dim glow of candles and terracotta lamps, Joachim took each child, now grown, into his arms and poured anointing oil upon their heads. Over each one he pronounced a father's blessing. Our tears flowed. We could not imagine what we would do without Joachim's presence. Over Mary Anna he lingered, placing his hands upon her swollen belly. Light burst forth around us, and each of us was calmed and comforted. The following day was the Sabbath. After the ritual observances, Joachim called the entire Carmel community to gather in the sanctuary. He explained that he would soon be taking his departure, but knew not the exact hour. Each soul went forth to this patriarch of Carmel to receive a blessing. Those of our family who were our sons-in-law, daughters-in-law, nieces, nephews, cousins, and grandchildren who had not been called to come to our small room now received a father's blessing from this beloved soul. Joachim had been such a constant companion, teacher, and brother that it was difficult to imagine how our Carmel family could get along without him. So it was that the weeks went by with no further hint of Joachim's departure. However, knowing our days together were far fewer than our personal wills would have chosen, we spent as much time together as possible. We did all the little things for each other that had always opened our hearts to a greater love of God and life. We visited our favorite places around Mount Carmel, especially lingering by the lone cedar tree, where many years earlier a robed minstrel played his lyre and pipes, calling me to our rendezvous with destiny. And every day saw us together in deep meditation, where we found deep solitude and inner peace. When we knew the hour of his departure had come, we came together, emptying our hearts of all that we had shared, and offered it up to the Lord Most High. We knelt in our small chamber, and our hands softly caressing each other's hearts, surrendering everything we were to each other and to God. Then I arose and stepped aside of my beloved. He remained in lotus position upon our pallet. I took my place opposite him by the door, as I burned sweet sandalwood, frankincense, and myrrh incense. As I stood before my beloved, I offered up the Psalms of David and the Psalms of Hathor, Isis, and Osiris. Joachim went into deep meditation. I saw his subtle bodies expanding around him in glorious rainbow-hued geometric patterns. Energy fields pulsed with his deep rhythmic breathing until a deep silence arose, as if the breath were being sucked in. Then there was stillness as Joachim's last breath passed ever so slowly through his pursed lips. From that point onward, his body was sustained entirely by prana. His beautiful countenance radiated profound serenity as he gradually released his physical focus and surrendered into the source of his being. I witnessed the light gathering around him as he slowly lifted his consciousness in a spiraling fashion from the base of his spine. The serpent energy quickened and rose up. The light increased until Joachim was wrapped in a fog-like mist. His face became transparent. His subtle energy fields spun faster and faster. Then I beheld his spirit lift up through his crown. His glory was magnificent to feel and behold. The silver cord connecting his soul to his body spun in a helical fashion as all his life force moved up and out of every cell of his physical body. The capstone of the etheric golden pyramid above Joachim's head glowed with a blinding gold-white light. Every cell in my body was quickened with life force, even as Joachim's body was slowly emptying. It was not that his life essence was entering me, it was that the universal life force was magnified in my body while I held space for Joachim's full consciousness to depart its focus out of his physical form. Then Joachim's silver cord snapped. Slowly the heavens' vision closed and our chamber dimmed. Joachim's body was still sitting in his favorite meditation position. I remained where I was for hours, continuing to assist Joachim's ascending consciousness. The light began to depart from the form before me until there was but a dim blue glow surrounding it. When I knew it was time, I gently approached the body, lovingly taking it into my arms and laying it upon the pallet. I removed the clothing and using spikenard balm and sea salt impregnated with healing oils, I washed and anointed Joachim's body. Then from a pottery urn containing oil-soaked linens and sheets of cotton gauze used for the shrouding of deceased bodies and for the regeneration purposes I have explained earlier, I wrapped a cocoon of gauze around the body. I left our room and hurried to Mary Anna and the others to call them to come. Next, I walked around the circumference of the Mount Carmel compound, ringing the small bell that denoted the passing of the soul of one of our community. I performed my ritual washings and joined with those who were now stepping one by one into my cell, offering their prayers and blessings to Joachim and to themselves. At last, Eli, who was trained more fully than I in the process of embalming, came with 2 other brothers to remove Joachim's body to the special room set aside in the infirmary for such purposes. For 3 days before burial, we acknowledged the passage of Joachim's soul to a new life. Because our community understood and realized that his departure was taken as an adept who knows how to consciously pass from the physical body, there was something of an air of celebration instead of great weeping and keening. Yet to be sure, there were tears and sadness because our beloved brother and father was no longer with us on the physical plane. For myself, there was an agonizing grief as I slowly released my immortal beloved, who was as my own self. There was a place within my soul that would not be comforted. It was as if my heart had been torn and broken with the memory of our one soul's first rendering into male and female. My solace was in the knowing that we were one and the divine love of our Mother, Father God had called Joachim to a greater assignment. I knew Joachim had merged with a larger portion of our oversoul, so that he could assist the coming of the teacher of righteousness from the other side of the veil. Joachim and I would continue to commune on the inner planes as he fulfilled his ethereal role. Even though I was comforted in the knowing the purpose of Joachim's departure, I still felt the torment within my soul over our mortal separation, which had renewed the sting of the original separation that was God's plan in the beginning of time. So I resolved to heal my heart by opening my heart to the great work that was now upon us, the Anointed One who would demonstrate the way of a Christ, who had come among us. He was here, right here in Carmel. He was in the womb of our beloved Mary Anna, and his precious body was growing daily. His great soul was fast approaching its event into the earth. How could I lament my loneliness when everything for which I had prepared so many long years was now upon me? So it was with steadfastness that I directed my attention to the work at hand. Joachim's body lay in a communal cemetery cave near a grove of cedars and cypresses. And though I would come remembering our love with offerings of flowers and psalms each week before the Sabbath, I turned my greater attention to preparing the young maidens for their light conceptions and seasons of giving birth. Wow, what an incredible way to pass on. I think it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, of course, so heartbreaking and so sad to lose somebody that you completely love. And I mean, she's just so brave to be like, yep, okay, I've got to focus on the job at hand. But I mean, she was only human as well. And I mean, you've got to take that time to grieve as well. But I just think that's such a beautiful way to pass. And a beautiful way, like knowing that you're going to pass is is really quite amazing in the sense that you have time to say goodbye to people and to spend time doing things that you love before you go. So I think that's really, really special, and not everybody gets the opportunity to do that. And sometimes if people become really, really sick, they're just dealing with the sickness and trying to get better, and you don't know whether you're going to survive or not. I think once you just know that you're going, it's in a way would be easier to kind of let go. But if you're sick and you're in pain, I mean, it's just horrible. In this way, they got to still enjoy time together, even though it was still incredibly sad and still very painful. But wow, I wonder how many people experience things like this. My dad has done a lot of our family tree, and so in Australia, our native people are Aboriginal people, and I'm actually quite proud that some of our ancestors were actually quite good friends with some of the Aboriginal natives, and they were so close, in fact, that some of the one of the Aboriginal people that they knew was actually knew that they were going to pass away, and they actually came and visited my ancestor to say goodbye before they passed. So I thought that was just really, really beautiful. And I think there's a lot of native tribes out there that would have passings like this, and it would be more of a celebration of life instead of what it's like today. So it would be interesting moving forward for more people to pass like this, but we need the knowledge, and I think we need more um, is it doulas? I think that there's like doulas for giving birth, and then there's also doulas for passing away. So I think it would be amazing to have more people like that, like what beautiful Alicia wants to do, who's has an amazing channel, which I will share below, because she shares some beautiful Reiki healings and music and things like that with us. So I will include her channel so you can subscribe to her. Okay, so now we are up to chapter 19, Yeshua ben Joseph's birth. So we're about a little bit under the middle of the book. So we're up to the really exciting part. I hovered over Mary Anna as much as she would allow me. I loved to place my hands upon the swollen bellies of the beautiful women whose light-conceived babies were as my own. I taught them how to commune with the souls who were growing within their wombs. Each soul brought very high frequencies of light directly from the throne of God. We assisted each incoming soul to hold its latticed patterns of multifaceted energy in perfect alignment. With Metatron and the archangels, seraphim and cherubim, we wove and encoded the DNA grids with enormous amounts of information. Together we prepared the frequencies within and around the mothers and the husbands and the community so that these precious souls would come in as harmoniously and painlessly as possible. Then in January, we received unsettling news from Judith's husband, Justinian, who had just returned from Rome. He told us that Augustus Caesar had decreed that a census of the empire's populace be taken during the 3 weeks following the spring equinox. It required every household to go to the town of ancestral origin to be registered by the tax collectors and to vow allegiance to Rome. So it was that the community of Carmel came together to discuss our differing opinions about this hardship, which was being asked of us by Caesar. Many of us were incensed over having to divide our allegiance between God and Caesar. In the midst of this controversy, our attention was drawn to the loud thumping of Joseph ben Jacob's staff on the flagstone floor. Silently we turned to Joseph, who had just opened the scroll containing the words of Micah the prophet. He then read, "But thou, Bethlehem Ephrathah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall come forth the one who is to be ruler in Israel. He whose goings forth have been predicted from of old, from the days of eternity. Henceforth he shall deliver them until the day that she who is in labor has given birth. Then the remnant of his brethren shall return to the children of Israel, and he shall stand and shepherd his flock in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God, and the people shall return. For now his dominion shall extend to the ends of the earth, and this one shall be peace. So he read from the prophet Micah until all began to understand that Creator was orchestrating a divine purpose, using Caesar as an instrument to fulfill prophecy. Joseph suggested that rather than wasting energy debating, all who were from the house of David and whose families had come out of Bethlehem gather together and pool our resources so that the necessary journey could be taken as comfortably and safely as possible. Also, to be taken into consideration were the women whose pregnancies were coming to full term, including Mary, Anna, and Rebecca. It was sore to think of the long journey being taken when their bellies were so swollen with child. Therefore, during the next several weeks, Joseph organized our community's resources so that there were plenty of wagons, supplies, and able-bodied men who could make the trip go smoothly. The winter's cold had passed and spring was in the air. The Passover was soon at hand, and the early harvest of winter grains, the lambing season, and the shearing of the flocks required our attention before we could begin our journey. There was also the taxed allotment of our harvest to be delivered into the hands of the local tax collectors. In order that our community be left with a small core group of men at all times, we divided among ourselves, according to our tribes of origins and our destinations, and cycled our leave at different times. With enough of the community moving in companies, there would be little concern for the marauding bands of thieves who robbed the unwary upon the highways. Instead of feeling sorry for ourselves, we chose to gird up our loins and make the best of our unfavorable circumstance. Then a joyful surprise happened a week before our departure, when Rebecca gave birth to a beautiful girl named Miriam. When we left, Mary, Anna, and Rebecca were placed into a blanket-laden cart pulled by 2 sturdy oxen. The very young and elderly also rode in wagons. I rode a mule. Several other women rode donkeys, camels, or walked. Most of the men and children went on foot. We brought our musical instruments, food, tents, and fodder for the animals. We sang as we walked, told stories around the campfires, and took turns with the necessary duties which moved us along our way over cobblestone paved Roman roads. As we passed by the outskirts of Jerusalem, the road widened and became paved with stones cut and laid by the Roman garrisons and slaves. Aqueducts and deep wells along the way supplied plenty of water. We felt protected and well cared for until we arrived within the narrow streets of Bethlehem, which were thronged with tumultuous crowds of people, animals, and conveyances. Roman soldiers were everywhere. Their swords and spears bristled against the sky, and their whips smacked the backs of slaves and naive passers-by who did not know the appropriate protocol. Such clamour I had not witnessed since Alexandria. That would be so hard to see once you've been living in a beautiful, loving, supportive community and then you go to the real world, I guess. Oh, it'd be horrible. Just beyond Bethlehem, near Etam, where I had lived long ago, there was a valley watered by a small spring. This land belonged to a distant relative who was the father of my son Luke's wife, Abigail. There we took refuge away from the noise of the swollen village. We set up camp near the well that watered their sheep and cattle. It was good to have our close friends and family around us. We awaited other family members who would be coming from Galilee, Judea, and Samaria. In order to raise our spirits, we took this opportunity to create a wonderful family reunion. Joseph ben Jacob's sister Elizabeth, who was also Mary Anna's paternal cousin, had given birth to her like-conceived child 6 months earlier. It had been 20 years since Elizabeth had last conceived. Her womb had been barren the last 8 years since the ceasing of her monthly bleeding. So it was that we were eager to welcome this miracle child. In accordance with guidance that her husband Zacharias had received from Archangel Gabriel, their child was named John. They also had a grown daughter by the name of Azarah, who was recently married and expecting her first child. Zacharias offered to stay at the temple in Jerusalem, where he performed his priestly duties, so that Mary, Anna, and I could stay with Elizabeth in her small abode on the outskirts of Bethlehem. Rebecca remained at the camp with Simeon and her baby while she was still undergoing her time of purification, as the time of bleeding after childbirth was called by the patriarchy. Joseph came and went from the camp every day. When the first day arrived for those of Galilee to be registered, we went before the census takers and tax collectors in Bethlehem. It was an ordeal, no matter how philosophically I attempted to look at it. By the time we were finished that evening, Mary Anna's birth contractions had begun. Of course, perfect timing. Joseph sat her on Elizabeth's faithful donkey, and we made haste to Elizabeth's small upper room, which was situated above a stable that opened to fence pens and hillside caves used for animals and storage. So that's convenient. They say that Jesus was born in a stable, but really Jesus was born above a stable. Her room was accessed through a breezeway to an inner courtyard that was shared by 3 connected dwellings belonging to Zacharias' brother Zenos. Then Joseph carried Mary Anna up Elizabeth's narrow stone stairs and laid her on the special pallet that had been prepared for her labor. Joseph had already sent a runner to bring Luke to act as attending physician in case there should be any complications. We were less than 3 miles away from the hillside caves and fence stables where Anna had given birth to Ariana long ago. I reflected that it had been almost 592 years since that moment when Hannah and I, her greater self, merged in the humble stable cave of Naomi's son-in-law. Now, here I was again in Bethlehem, awaiting the moment of all moments, for which I had taken embodiment so very long ago. Wow, that is a really long time to be working and waiting towards something so special. Following Joseph and Mary Anna, Elizabeth carried John upon her hip and a bundle of Egyptian cotton sheets in her other arm. I carried urns of water. Mary Anna's small body quaked as she panted. Her contractions quickened and became more and more intense as we approached the midnight hour. We continually reminded her to breathe as she pushed, relaxing into the birth pangs, between chewing on a root that lessened the pain. She repeated mantras to her beloved child to calm him and herself. That is a really, really smart idea. I wish that I had done that. Because when your baby's stressed out and you're stressed out, it just makes everything so much worse. And I know this from experience. So yeah, I wish I had learnt some more things like this to just remain calm, and I think it would be a so much more enjoyable experience for so many women. It's all about our mindset, and we're programmed to believe that it's painful and it's scary and things can go wrong. And instead, it could be this beautiful, loving experience that, yes, there might be little complications, there might be a bit of pain, but it doesn't have to be this horrible, scary, stressful experience. I get very frustrated with society sometimes. With her eyes turned upwards to the Holy of Holies at the center of her brain, she prayed and allowed herself to go into a very deep trance state. I checked Yeshua's position and found him coming down the birth canal favorably. The contractions gradually intensified through the midnight hour. She bore down with great strength for so young a maiden of 16 years. Oh my God, I didn't realize that. She's only 16 years old. How did I not realize this before? Whoa, that's young. I encouraged her to sound forth the feelings that engulfed her. Straight away, Mary Anna's yoni began to open with Yeshua's crowning head. It was good that we had been preparing her body during the past month for the birthing process. Because she had not known the penetration of a man, we had assisted her by applying salves, massaging, and expanding the delicate tissues through which Yeshua was now passing. That would be really strange to be only 16 years old. I don't know how I missed that the first time I listened to the book. And to never have actually been penetrated and then to push a baby out, like, wow, that's something. From somewhere deep in my being arose a litany of sounds. Out of my throat came the familiar song of highest destiny, which the priestesses of Hathor sing to newborn souls. High above us, clearly visible as a stationary star in the heavens, was the Beth Elohim Merkabah. Hosts of angels, dominions, and elementals gathered and hovered. It was as though all of life held its breath as the deepest silence penetrated the very core of heaven and earth. Soon his head, covered with curly, dark, auburn gold hair, followed by the rest of his small body, lay in my hands. Oh my God, I'm actually getting emotional. It's like they've been waiting so long for this to happen, and it's this prophecy that's been waiting to be revealed, and he's finally coming out, and it's like, oh my God. Glory be to God in the highest, peace, goodwill to humankind. The refrains of the angelic hosts resounded. Our chamber glowed with golden celestial light. Behold my Son, in whom I am come to gather my own. In thee I am well pleased, were the words etched into our hearts by God Most High. So did we receive the Son of Man, and just as he had promised and showed me over a year before, Yeshua had delivered himself into my small hands. Indeed, I was blessed among women, even as was his precious mother. Oh, it's just emotional because babies are just so special. So Yeshua was born in the sign of Aries. So that's interesting. He wasn't born at Christmas time. He was born in April. His birth occurred about 1 hour after midnight on the 21st day of Nisan, according to the Jewish calendar, which corresponds to early April of 4 BC, according to your Gregorian calendar. There you go. So isn't that interesting? Joseph had remained with us throughout the labor and delivery. Sometimes he would pace the floor, feeling that he could not interfere with the midwifery in which we older women were absorbed. Adding to Joseph's awkward dilemma was also the shyness he felt because even though he was Mary Anna's husband, he had not yet had sexual intercourse with her. However, the moment Yeshua began to crown, Joseph was immediately at my side. Several days earlier, Joseph had gone to the stable below to fetch a small wooden corn crib, which was used to feed the sheep and goats. We had already washed it and lined it with a sheep's fleece and the freshest straw that could be found at this season of the year. Over this, we added folded sheets of Egyptian cotton. This humble manger would later receive the infant Yeshua, so that Mary Anna could rest. John lay in a cradle near Elizabeth's pallet. He had remained wide awake during the entire birth. Sometimes he would cry, and Elizabeth would give him a breast to suckle, while she washed and cooled Mary Anna's face and hands. Then, when Mary Anna required more attention, John would be laid back into his cradle or placed in Joseph's nervous arms. It was in the thick of things that John preferred to be. So it was that he observed the coming forth of his cousin, whose pathway he would open and prepare. While Elizabeth tended Mary Anna's delivery of the placenta, I gently laid Yeshua upon his mother's belly with the umbilical cord still attached. Then I placed the placenta into preservative oils within a special container to be ceremonially buried later. Joseph hovered over his son and his beloved Mary, as he called her. We abided in silence until the life pulse connecting Mary Anna and her babe had finally subsided. Then we tied the umbilical cord, and washed the newborn babe. Here he was, safely delivered. We praised the Father, Mother, God with all our hearts, minds, and souls. We prayed for the strength and wisdom to protect and prepare Yeshua, ben Joseph, to accomplish all that he had come to do. We wondered that Luke had not arrived yet, but we were thankful that his medical skills had not been required. Although it was still dark outside, a great light flooded our little room, as though it were noonday. After we had washed and anointed Mary Anna, we took her to her own bed, which was behind a hanging rug that partitioned the living room. Yeshua was swaddled with the finest woven Egyptian cotton, which Mary Anna had carefully hemmed and embroidered with a colourful geometric design that was common to the lineage of David. We could feel the presence of the great ones all around. Communions between the many realms and dimensions were listened to within our hearts as we silently sat together for the next few hours, watching over the sleeping babe at Mary Anna's breast. Then there was a knock at the door. Elizabeth ran to open it and found her landlord and brother-in-law, Zenos, standing with Luke, whose fast breathing indicated that he had been running. Luke immediately approached his younger sister and the babe, Yeshua. After washing his hands, he carefully proceeded to examine them and was overjoyed that they both were healthy and robust. As he was trained to do from his youth, Luke later made a written record of this most wondrous of stories. This record, although altered, has survived relatively intact down through the centuries and is still known in your day as the Gospel of Luke. Luke profusely apologized for not being present for the birth, but explained that he had been attending another birthing mother, assisting both mother and child to survive a critical condition. I smiled inwardly as I realized that it was my hands, not Luke's, that received Yeshua ben Joseph, just as my grandson had promised. A short time later, Zenos returned to announce that there was a gathering of celebrants at his door on the street below. Some were shepherds who had labored for Luke's father-in-law. They told him a great host of angels had appeared to them while they were caring for their sheep on the hillside. Others of the group reported they had been awakened from very lucid dreams in which they were told to come to Elizabeth's home. They had known Mary Anna was about to give birth when they last saw her. All had been told to arise and come forth to behold a child newly born, called Emmanuel, Prince of Peace, who was favoured of God, even as was Zachariah's son John, who would later be called John the Baptist. As the sun began its ascent, all of these beloved pilgrims were invited to take turns coming up the stairs behind Zenos's main house in twos and threes to sit for a short time of meditation with the sleeping babe. From time to time, unexpectedly, Yeshua would open his wide almond-shaped blue-grey eyes to look upon these family members and friends who were among the first to welcome him. Of my children, there were Nathan, Luke, and Rebecca, who came with their partners. Rebecca brought their baby daughter, Miriam. Joachim's and my other sons and daughters were far away. Joseph of Arimathea, along with his wife, Mary of Magdala, and his sister Martha, were counted in the census at Bethany. In a fascinating synchronicity, Mary Magdalene was born the same number of hours after sunset as Yeshua's birth occurred before sunrise on the very same day in Bethany. Among Luke's father-in-law's laborers, there was a young boy of 12 years by the name of Nathaniel ben Ptolemy, Bartolome in Aramaic. He had been with the company of shepherds who had beheld the angels. In his arms was a newborn orphan lamb, which he had brought as an offering to Yeshua. When he saw Yeshua, he fell on his knees, crying out that in a vision several months earlier he had seen this very child, whom an angel had told him was the promised Messiah. As he wept, his tears fell into the soft wool of his bleating offering. When he looked up, Mary Anna invited him to come forward. Laying a gentle hand upon Nathanael's head, she looked steadfastly into his eyes and said, "You, my child, are favored of God. He who is now with us has called you to come out of the world and to be as one who is his friend and disciple forever." Then she asked Joseph to take the lamb while she placed the babe Yeshua into Nathanael's tanned arms. I realized, my beloved friend, that my story is becoming increasingly complex. I also realize that much of what I'm sharing with you conflicts with the stories generally accepted by Christians today. Although I am risking confusion and conflict for you, my intent is to bring clarity and open-mindedness. There is so much to be conveyed, and it is being given portion by portion, topic by topic, energy flow by energy flow. However, do not accept my story blindly, yet give it a chance to work upon your heart and then upon your mind. I remind you that these words are being given in such a way as to open and stretch your consciousness so that you can consider alternatives. It is for you to discern for yourself the truth of what is contained herein, according to its power to uplift, transform, and empower your own knowing. More than to bring forth another version of the Christ story, it is my deeper purpose to prepare you for the advent of the Christ within your own heart. In this way, you are being prepared for the great changes that are coming upon you. Therefore, open your heart and remember the energies that are witnessed through your feelings. I shall say further that I am here with you. The very purpose of my coming long ago is the purpose of my being here in this present moment. You need not think that I am distant in time or space. or that what occurred 2,000 years ago has no relevance for your day. You are currently in the same process of rewriting your past history. Indeed, some of you have come back from the future for precisely this purpose. I, Anna of Carmel, returned to bear witness to the birth of the Christ in you. I am here to receive you just as I received the Anointed One 2,000 years ago. As I bring you a chronology of events and the stories of familiar characters you have studied, know that it is the transmission of transformational frequencies that is more important than the words through which they come. Once you can hear beyond the words, you may remember who you really are and step forward to fulfill your mission by playing your part in this grand drama of planetary ascension that we are co-creating together. And that is the end of chapter 19. In the next episode, I'm going to continue with chapter 20, which is the visitation of the Magi, which will be what we know as the three men that bring the frankincense and the myrrh and I forgot what the other one is. But anyways, it's interesting that she says that. And I do agree that, we do need to take things with discernment, with all kinds of channeling work, with all kinds of spiritual work. And what I like to do is I like to think on things for a little while. Like I'll just be going about my day and I'll be thinking about what I've just read or what I've just learned. And, things will either resonate with me or they don't. I really like this book. This book resonated with me a lot. And I think it's a very, very beautiful story. Whether it's 100% accurate or not, we don't know. We don't know what is accurate or not. All we know is what we can feel inside. And the better we get at working with our intuition all the time and practice working with that, that's only going to get stronger and stronger the more you do that. And that's really the only way. I mean, I have been down so many rabbit holes of all kinds of conspiracies and explored many, many different theories and many different things. And at the end of the day, there always seems to be another version of events. There always seems to be something else. So I really think, the best way is just to see what resonates with you. And what resonates with you might not resonate with somebody else. Some people might hear this book and just think that is a load of rubbish. And then other people might hear this book and just think, wow, that is beautiful. That makes sense. And that's kind of how I feel. I'm not saying it's 100% true, but I just saying that I resonate with it. And I hope that you are really enjoying hearing this story as much as I am. We still have so much that's going to happen. So that's really, really exciting. And then after we finish this book, I really want to get into the sequel to this book, which is going to be different messages from different people that were part of the Carmel community. So that will be really, really exciting. Well, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you on the next episode. Bye.